Claire, and thanks everybody for being here on this cold, snowy Tuesday South Bend afternoon. It's no secret. I've talked quite a bit about the CFP in the national press over the course of the last 24, 36 hours. And like Claire said, we thought this would be a great opportunity to get everybody together, people we interact with day in and day out, and answer any questions, but not just about, obviously, one of the key topics out there right now, the CFP and the process, but about all of our programs. Notre Dame, any one of our sports, kind of what's going in the college space. This is something we want to do at least once a year, just to spend time with all of you and give you an inside look of what's going on here at Notre Dame. But no secret, we were shocked, I would say mystified by what happened on Sunday. And just, where my head and heart go, and I know Marcus feels the same way, you just feel for those student athletes on our football team. As I said yesterday, as I said on Sunday, we felt we did everything we could over the course of the season. We lost our first two games. We're not hiding from that. We lost against a really good Miami team. We lost a nail-biter against Texas A&M, two great teams by a total of 4 points, and then we did everything we needed to do. We had one of the most dominant 10 games runs in the history of college football. And on top of that, we felt that the CFP committee, the ranking committee, felt the same way. You go back to that first ranking where we were 6-2 and Miami was 6-2, and they had already beaten us. And we were 10th and they were 18th. And the only thing that happened from that point forward is we both went on these amazing runs. And through no fault of our own, we wake up and find out that, we're the odd man out. We're on the outside looking in. And it's just, as I've said, all the credit in the world to the other teams that are in. They are 12 terrific teams that have won conference championships. Miami, I think the world of the program, I think it's one of the great universities in this country. Dan Radakovich is a good friend. Miami deserves to be in the CFP. Of course they do. And Alabama does as well. And you could make that argument for Texas and Vanderbilt. And you could go right on down the list. But, we were just led to believe all season long, if we took care of business, we were going to be in. And then to have that shock, that surprise on Sunday in that room with those kids who have given everything that they have since August to put themselves in that position. To be told week in and week out that you're in that position, provided you win. And we certainly won when you think about these last 10 weeks. And it just boggles my mind that when we got off that plane that Sunday morning in snowy South Bend after the Stanford game, that was it. And that's not the way this season deserved to end with the performance of our football team. And I'm biased. Of course, I'm a 1,000,000% biased when it comes to Notre Dame. But you ask anybody in college football, we're one of the best teams in the country. We're one of those handful of teams that could absolutely win the national championship this year. And then standing up here today, knowing that we have 0% chance of proving that on the field is a bitter pill to swallow. But it's the situation we're in. And, what frustrates me, and I know what frustrates Marcus, is there's just no good explanation. Normally when you stand in front of these young student athletes who've poured their heart and soul, and they have limited opportunities in life to do this. You're only 18 to 22 for so long. There are only so many seasons. There are hundreds of seasons in the history of Notre Dame football, and hopefully there'll be hundreds of more seasons. But it's a finite amount of time in these kids' lives. And they put everything they had into it and positioned themselves and thought they did everything they needed to do. And it was just the ultimate gut punch to know that this team doesn't get to proceed and try to play for a national championship. So where my head is. I know, Coach Freeman, I spent most of the day Sunday with him, and he's going through the same emotions. But, you got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start thinking about next season. And really now our focus is on those guys on the football team, our student athletes. What's best for them? Because they're, these are tough days for them as well. And that's a lot more important. How I feel about this is how they feel about this. So I wanted to get that, state that up front. And, when you think about Notre Dame right now, we've got a lot going on. A lot going on in the college space. This is a time of unprecedented change. Luckily for us, and because of the history of Notre Dame, we have a seat at the table in terms of talking about what's next for college sports, what's best for college sports, maybe perhaps what needs to change for college sports. So we have our eye on the national landscape about what needs to happen in college sports to preserve something that's so great. And then we're kind of hitting the ground running. Obviously, really excited about the start of our men's basketball season. Coach Shrewsbury doing an amazing job. We had an unfortunate injury, as you all saw, with Marcus, and I'm sure Micah will address that, later on today. But a great start to the season. Young talent playing unbelievably well. And on the women's side, the job Niele is doing with a different team than last year. No secret about that. Having the most talented player in the country in Hannah Hidalgo and this supporting cast, and really excited to see how that season progresses as well. In addition to all of our other programs here that are, really gearing up for an exciting winter and an exciting spring. But with that, I'd love to open it to questions and answer or try to answer anything that's on your minds.
We'll start on the right.
I don't need a mic.
I can hear you.
Yeah. I was curious. You mentioned permanent damage with the ACC. What is the next step in assessing that relationship? Where do you go from here? And what was the damage specifically?
Yeah, I would tell you, again, we have the ultimate respect for the fellow universities in the ACC. Wonderful universities with wonderful athletic programs. So it's not about the universities. It's not about Miami. I've texted back and forth with Dan Radakovich. I sent him a text last night saying, so happy you guys made it. I hope you go deep. I think you have the talent to win it all. But what we were really surprised by and disappointed was how the ACC conference really went on a social media campaign, in my opinion, attacking our football program. Miami had done that and they didn't. I get it. All's fair. There's a great rivalry, decades-long rivalry between Notre Dame and Miami. And that's the spirit of the universities and the football programs and fandom. And that's what makes college football special, whether it's Notre Dame, Miami, Notre Dame, USC, Michigan, Ohio State. But we felt this was different, and it raised a lot of eyebrows. And, we made our feelings known that we didn't particularly understand this. And it just kind of puzzled us that a conference that's home to over 600 of our student athletes walking around this campus today, I guess chose to go down that road. I guess intellectually I understand it, but I certainly don't agree with it. And why would you attack an unbelievably important business partner of yours in football and a member of your conference in 24 other sports? I'm one person. I don't see the logic in that. I know other leaders at the university didn't see the logic in that. And the ACC is important to us, and we're important to the ACC. And think about football for a minute. Those ACC teams want to play us in football. Interesting stat. Since 2014, when we started our football relationship with the ACC, if you look at stadiums, ACC games sell out roughly 23% of the time. When Notre Dame goes to an ACC site, it's 90% of the time. When you think about ratings for ACC football games when they play Notre Dame, there's a tremendous lift. I don't understand why you would go on a social media campaign to attack an important partner. Who's some of our important partners in the football space? NBC. We wouldn't do that to NBC. Now, I understand they have to stand up for their teams in football. We just think there's other ways to do it. And it has created damage. I'm not going to shy away from that. And that's just not me speaking. People a lot more important at this university than me feel the same way. So I think it has done some real damage, and I think the ACC knows that.
And my follow-up is beyond expanding at some point to 14 or 16 teams. What needs to be fixed with the process? Because you question the process, not necessarily who's in and who's out. And how do you, Pete Bevacqua, go about helping to fix that?
Yeah, there's human beings making these decisions, so they're never going to be perfect. That's understandable. but you get with these weekly shows and weekly rankings, very strong signals are being sent. Okay, Notre Dame, in the first ranking, you are 10th at 6-2. Well, we did nothing from that point until last Sunday, but to prove to the world that we've gotten better each week, progressed each week, have the best player in the country on our team in Jeremiah Love. We've done everything from that point, not even to put into question whether we should stay at 10 or get better. To me, all the empirical data in the world suggests we should get better. So we had this starting point of being 10th, dominated the rest of the season, and are on the outside looking in. So how do you fix that? You either have a really series of defined metrics that everybody can rely on and see and know what they're going into, or you have one ranking show at the end and say, okay, here's what it is and here's why we thought. And that would have been less of a shock to the system, to our team, than what happened was. Because if you wake up every day for 5-6 weeks and say, you're in, you're in, you're in, and what you do in response to that is you win in dominant fashion, 70 points, 50 points, 49, just week in and week out. And you have Jeremiah and Jadarian, they look like they're out of the Matrix, and it just everything going well. And then you wake up on Sunday and you're in a room with these 18 to 22-year-olds who are like, all right, are we 9th? Are we 10th? Let's get to practice. Let's get going. Let's win a national championship. Oh, wait a second. Sorry. You know what? There was a game where a team went through it and fourth down. That ought to mean something. Or, well, you lost to this team in week 1 and we asked everybody to go back and watch it. Well, we don't see the logic in all that. And it's something that has to be fixed because, I said it yesterday, we take this very seriously at Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman takes this very seriously, our coaches, our student athletes, our administration. These rankings, and I said it, so I'm repeating myself, but they can't be a game of musical chairs at a 5th grade birthday party. And that's what it felt like to us. And don't appreciate that because of the impact it's had on the kids in that room and this university, quite frankly. These are big decisions. And we just have not had anybody answer us in a way that gives us any satisfaction at all as to what happened.
Next we'll go to Adam Bergen Middle.
Hey, what went in just to the sequencing of the social media posts that caught your attention, but then also what communication did you have at that point with the conference, specifically with Jim, and then what happened next? If you could just take us through that timeline.
Yeah, I don't have the exact timeline in front of me, so I'll give you generalities about the timing of it. I think it was like a 3.5 week campaign. Saw the first social media post, and my gut reaction was somebody in their social media department got over their skis and did something that the ACC was going to correct. And quite frankly, I was kind of expecting a phone call saying, hey, sorry about that, it won't happen again. But then it did happen again. And we started to communicate with the ACC, texts that I sent, emails that I sent, and it continued to happen. And I had a conversation, I had a phone call with Jimmy a week ago today saying, hey, listen, that's a conversation I want to keep between me and Jimmy, but certainly got the point across that this has raised eyebrows and you got to know it's caused damage here between the university and the ACC.
And just to play his side or their side, hey, we're promoting our team. We're also doing other comparative tweets or whatever it is. Why did you still feel like you guys were being targeted throughout that period of time?
Well, we were definitely being targeted. And for better or for worse, we have a different relationship with the ACC than any other team in college football other than the teams that are in the ACC. Because we're in the ACC for 24 sports. We have a scheduling agreement with the ACC. And again, the ACC does wonderful things for Notre Dame, but we bring tremendous football value to the ACC. And we didn't understand why you would go out of your way to try to damage us in this process.
We'll go in the back to Matt Freeman.
Have you spoken with any Power 4 commissioners since Sunday? And if so, what were those conversations kind of focused on?
Since Sunday, the only commissioner I've spoken to and a couple of great conversations with him is Greg Sankey. Greg and I talk all the time. I can't tell you how much I admire Greg and his leadership. And, good conversations, really about format, process. Gave him my viewpoint on the process. He shared some thoughts that he had with me that obviously between Greg and me. Format, Greg knows, they all know how I feel about the format. Go and put the process aside, the format. I mean, 4 teams, 12 teams, 14 teams, 16 teams, 1,000 teams. Should be 16 teams, in my opinion, with 5 automatic qualifiers and 11 at large. Think about that this year. If we had 4 teams, it would have been perfect. I don't think anybody would argue that those aren't the right 4 teams that are 1 through 4, right? The way they're playing, Texas Tech, Ohio State, Indiana, and Georgia. Particularly Indiana, what an unbelievable season they've had, and Georgia looks fantastic. 16 would have been perfect. Notre Dame, Texas, Vanderbilt, who else is in there? It's never, year by year, you're never going to have the same data points each year. It's never going to work out perfectly, whether you had 4 teams, 12, 14, or 16. What I like about 16 is it does create for more opportunity, does create more narratives around more schools, and yet preserves the integrity and the importance of the regular season. And I think that's one of the greatest things college football has going for it. The regular season is more important in college football than it is in any other sport by a mile. Think about college basketball, it's just different. Think about the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA. College football, hey, we see it. We see it last year. We saw it this year. We knew last year when we lost to NIU, we had no wiggle room. Every game was a bowl game. Every game was a CFP game. This year, after we lost in the last second to A&M, 0 room for error. Turns out we didn't even have 0 room for error. But I think 16 teams with that 5 and 11 breakdown is the way to go. And I think the vast, vast majority of people in the CFP management room feel the same way.
And then it seems like some schools have found a way to work around the house cap. Is there any update from your end on where that kind of stands, just with new information coming out?
Yeah, I would tell you, we are huge proponents of the house settlement. Notre Dame, give credit to Notre Dame, before I arrived here in this role, was huge proponents and endorsed the concept of student athletes being fairly compensated. What you have now with the cap, let's be realistic with each other. The cap is $20.5 million. The first $2.5 million of scholarships counts off the cap. You're left with $18 million. And schools around the country are gonna use that compensation for NIL opportunities, primarily for football, men's and women's basketball. So even if you start at 18, most schools around the country, you're starting to think about a number in the $15, $16 million range. If you're placing a great emphasis on the value of the football program, which most major Power 4 conference schools are, and we are. But then you read things and see things about what teams are setting aside for roster numbers. You see it in news reports. You see it in the back and forth with coaches' negotiations. So the numbers you're hearing and the numbers we know that are out there don't compute with the cap number. So I think we have to be honest and forthright with ourselves and have a set of rules that are realistic and reflect what's happening, reflect major college football in 2025 and beyond. I think the cap's too low. And I think if we keep operating under this rule of where the cap is, most major programs are going to have a heck of a tough time going backwards, because you read the same news reports that I do. You read and know about the same roster numbers for NIL and compensation that I do. Instead of making pretend that doesn't exist, let's deal with it and come up with a set of rules that can be followed and then hold people's feet to the fire.
We'll go back right to Andrew Mintock.
Pete, when a decision is made to skip the postseason, how are postseason bonuses that are part of standard coaching contracts and staff contracts compensation handled?
Yeah, we talked a bit about that. The way we structure them is we never want things just to be about one game. And national championship's different. Obviously, there's a great bonus structure for our coaches if you win a national championship. But I can tell you that the coaches' compensation contracts and the bonus concepts, the difference between the decision that we made and going to play in one of these other bowls is inconsequential.
Well, up the middle to Pete Byrne.
Hey,
Wanted to follow up on some of your thoughts on the ACC. Excuse me. Obviously, you made it known that you're not pleased with some of their actions. I'm curious now, in your opinion, what are the next steps? Do they need to reach out to you, or are there thoughts maybe from some of your colleagues here in the university that maybe you're interested in something else?
yeah, Pete, I would tell you at this point, like we haven't really given all of that a ton of thought. You know, I mean, are we looking for an apology? To be quite frank, I don't think an apology does anything or unwinds what has happened. But we'll, at the right time, we'll sit down with the ACC leadership and I think have hopefully a very frank, honest, hopefully productive conversation. But I would tell you that time's not now.
And then you've also mentioned the memorandum of understanding moving forward. Could you just flesh that out a little bit and explain what that means for you guys in the future and how that came about?
Yeah, and I don't want to go into too much detail with the MOU, but some things have already been reported. And there is a provision in the MOU starting next year, which is the extension years of the ESPN deal between the College Football Playoff and ESPN. That, you know, if the number stays at 12, if Notre Dame is 12 or better, we're in. And then if it goes to 14, there's a different set of metrics. But, you know, people have asked me, well, you know, how come Notre Dame gets that benefit? And it's, you know, we still have to prove it on the field more than anybody. I mean, we still have to put ourselves in that area, that zip code of a top 12 team. But we want to protect ourselves against like what happened this year. And, you know, do I think Miami should be in the CFP? 100%. Do I think Alabama should be in the CFP? Yeah, they deserve it. They had a tough schedule. They played great. You know, they had a tough championship game. But we deserve to be in the CFP. And if I was at Texas, you know, I would have a strong argument. If I had the great season Vanderbilt had. But again, you know, for us, we needed to have some protection in there to say, okay, if we prove it on the field over the course of a season, and we're fortunate enough to be in that top 12, we need to know we have a surefire route of getting into the playoffs.
We'll go on the right to Pete Sampson.
I was interested, just as you look internally moving forward, what do you think Notre Dame can do to avoid this kind of situation moving forward, opposed to, you know, what the CFP can do or what, you know, changes can be made there?
We always want to know where we stand, right? So to answer your question based on what happened this year, like, hey, would I like to say, hey, let's go back in time and beat Miami, beat Texas A&M? Sure. But okay, we didn't. Early season, 2 great games, heartbreakers, 3 points, 1 point. But what could we do differently from that moment forward? Couldn't have done anything better. And we were told, hey, you're in, right? Here are the rankings. And rankings can change. I'm not naive. But based on what happened in the rest of the season around the country and based on what we did, what Marcus's team and that team did, there's nothing I could say we could have done differently from early Sunday morning after the A&M game to getting off that plane in the snow in South Bend at 8:30 on a Sunday morning from Stanford. We could not have done anything better. In the future, at least let us respond to a data set that we can rely on. Because if you're getting a ranking that's a hollow ranking, you can't make decisions to improve it if it's a moving target. So, hey, we're 9th. Let's do everything we can to stay 9th or get better. Maybe we'll go to 10th. I don't know, but we're in 10 or 9. But if that was all kind of just happenstance, I don't know. You can't respond to a data point that isn't something that you can rely on. So in that first week of the CFP rankings, if we were 17th or 16th or 19th behind Miami, all right, we know where we are. It's going to be an uphill climb. This is going to be tough, right? I don't know if we can get in. Let's start thinking about, well, what's next? Let's keep winning. Let's keep doing, you know, but at least we know where we stand. That's why we felt like we had the rug pulled from underneath us. We thought we knew where we stood week in and week out. And then, oh, by the way, here we go. Here's the selection show. You know, just kidding.
If you had just been 19th the whole time, do to use your example there. So you knew you were out.
Well, we
Would you
would,
have
we
played-
would
would
know
you-
the hill we'd have to climb, but I would tell you, I think we would have climbed that hill or come
Okay.
close to it based on our performance for those subsequent 10 weeks.
I guess I'm asking more like if you didn't have the rug pulled out of you element to it, would you have played in a bowl game, or is Notre Dame out of the non-CFP bowl game business?
No, it's a great question, and we have making the team making the decision not to play in this year's bowl game was a decision solely isolated to this year. We can't speak for future years. We can't speak for what the captains on the team feel like, the nature of a season. Maybe you started the season strong and then fell off, and here's a way to turn the corner and reignite momentum and springboard you into the next year. Maybe one year you have an unbelievably young team and you want to kind of start that maturation process for the next year. But this year, this was a team that had national championship aspirations. This was a team that was unbelievably close-knit. And in the crazy world of major college football emotions, you find out you're not in the CFP and you're shocked. And then you get a call, hey, do you want to go play in this bowl game? And so Marcus places a ton of emphasis on the roles of the captains of the team. You saw that if you're watching the Peacock documentary. These aren't just, the letter C pasted onto a jersey and kind of a pat on the back. They have a real role in our team and in the decisions the team makes week in and week out. He relies on those captains and really treats them as a key element of the decision-making process, bounces things off of them. How's the team feeling? What are we thinking? I think his relationship with the team, but particularly with the captains, is magical. So what he did is he reached out to the captains and said, hey, listen, yeah, this is rough, but let's not make an emotional decision. Let's make a smart decision. Let's take a deep breath. Now, granted, you don't have a week to take a deep breath. You don't have 24 hours to take a deep breath. You have a couple of hours, but settle down, reload, as he says, and let's think about this. Talk about it with each other. Get a sense of how the team feels, And the unanimous message that came back was we are such a close team, those guys in that locker room, that they wanted to make sure that the last team that took the field as part of the 2025 Notre Dame team was the same team that took the field when we got off the plane in Miami. They didn't feel it was right for this team to make the decision to go out there and not be that full team that has been so close together, that's going to have a great event here in town just to kind of let their hair down tomorrow. That was the decision. And it was a decision that I applaud. And I think it was a hard decision. I think they knew it was going to be a hard decision. I think they knew it was going to be a decision that not everybody was going to love. But it was the right decision for this team at this moment. I'm positive of that. And does that mean that if we're in this situation again in the future, that the same decision would be made? No. It's year by year, case by case. It was the right decision for this team at this moment.
We'll stay on the right side of the front row, Tom White.
How do you go from Sundays, did that really happen, to turning the page and saying however that happened, we can't let that happen again? Like when does the fog clear for you and your staff?
Yeah, no, it's like I'd be lying if I were to tell you I wasn't dwelling on it. I'm dwelling on it. But we got to all get over it. Can't forget it, because you want to help the process get better. I think we have an obligation. I have an obligation. I think the university has an obligation to make the process better. So it's not like, okay, rearview mirror, forget about that, let's go. No, it's no. Wait a second. We don't want Notre Dame to feel that way again. We don't want any team to feel that way again. Like, let's try to do everything we can to correct the system, make it better, so no group of 100 plus 18 to 22-year-olds are sitting in a room with national championship dreams and they're shattered a moment later without a good explanation. I don't want that to happen to anybody in the country. What do we do now? Of course, you want to start thinking about 26 and what we can do in 26, including, opening the season at Lambeau against Wisconsin. But, the conversations I've also had with Marcus, we have to make sure that this team realizes it was an amazing season. Like, don't let this moment define the season. You had one of the best seasons in college football. This is, in my opinion, and you guys know, I have been a Notre Dame football fan since the day I was born. I think this is one of the most talented Notre Dame teams that we've ever had, with some of the most talented players we've ever had, and some of the greatest moments we've had this season. Like, we're not going to let this ruin this great season. That's not fair to Marcus, our coaches, those student athletes on the team, those that are leaving us, whether they're seniors or going into the NFL. Like, we have to honor this season. We have to celebrate this season. This season is not going to become an unfortunate footnote in the history of Notre Dame football. It's one we're going to look back on and applaud and celebrate and remember, because there were amazing moments. One of the best moments I've had at Notre Dame, whether I was a student here or, as a young fan, but that Saturday night in the pouring rain against USC, like, don't forget that moment for these players who, when they're 54 years old and thinking back to their college time, I would kill me if they think back at this and say, wow, what a disappointment that season was. It wasn't. It was a magical season. You did amazing things. Let's not forget that. That's our main obligation to those players right now.
Can this relationship with the ACC be healed?
I mean, all things can be healed. Like, I'm not going to be overly dramatic here, right? But it strained the relationship. It strained the relationship.
We'll go in the back, right? That's
Pete, I know you can't speak for Marcus Freeman, but where have you seen his headspace be at, and how have you seen him handle all of this, whether it be the snub or the decision to opt out of the bowl game?
Yeah, Marcus is, he's a fighter. He's a competitor. He's a fighter. He'll use this as motivation at the right time. He's got a long memory. And this will work to our advantage next year, knowing what I know about Marcus. At this moment, again, it's taking care of his team. These student athletes on that team, what's best for them. We talked about it on Sunday, and Marcus was talking to Mike Denbrock and Ron Powless, and let's do something fun this week for this team. They need something fun, and celebrate this team, honor this team. He'll have conversations with every one of the student athletes on the team. That's where his head is right now. He won't forget. Like I said, he has a long memory. This will be motivation for him. That's for sure going forward. But that's really, I think the key for them. And, what I found surprising, I've taken some flack, in certain press outlets for using the term student athlete. And, these every one of our 740 so young men and women who play a sport at Notre Dame, they're student athletes. And you ask the guys on that football team, they're student athletes. They're great athletes, but they're students. And I just, that is our main responsibility here, is not to lose that North Star. And, one of the things they're going to do now is start getting ready for exams next week. And that entered into the decision. And, it's been a long season, and last year was a long season. And let's let these young men get home and spend Christmas and the holidays with their families. And maybe for a few weeks, be like college students and try to enjoy life a little bit after a really tough moment.
I know you said, I know you said on the Dan Patrick show that you didn't want to engage in a smear campaign like you felt like the ACC did. But as far as social media lobbying for Notre Dame's case, did you think it wouldn't matter? Did you think you didn't need to because you were already in via the current rankings, or what was the logic behind not doing much on Notre Dame's on social media?
Yeah, I mean, I went on a few shows Friday and said, why I believed we've earned every right to be in. Marcus did a few interviews. I know everybody has different styles, right? Our style, our approach is, look what we're doing on the field. Look at the domination these last 10 weeks. Watch Jeremiah Love, watch Kadarian Price, watch Leonard Moore, watch Adon Schuler. Look at the development and the maturation of C.J. Carr. going from somebody who's never played to, in my opinion, being one of a handful of the very, very best quarterbacks in college football. It was kind of like, hey, if you have this proof on the field, like, what am I going to say that's going to add to that?
We'll stick on the right side of the front row, Mike Giardino.
Hey, Pete. The drumbeat continues. I think it'll probably be annually that the NFL has eyes on Marcus. Even some of the coaches, Mike Vrabel, saying what a stud Marcus is. How do you stay proactive with that NFL possibility for him? And what's your sense of whether there might come a day where he's all about challenges, where that would be an appealing challenge that you just couldn't match?
Yeah, well, I would say I would never say we wouldn't match anything when it comes to Marcus. Everybody has eyes on Marcus. College has eyes on Marcus. NFL has eyes on Marcus. I bet Hollywood has eyes on Marcus, right? I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the next, Leo DiCaprio movie with Martin Scorsese. Marcus is Marcus. All the credit to him. He deserves it. He's the absolute best coach in the country for Notre Dame, full stop. He's one of the greatest college coaches in the country. And people forget how young he is. So I get it. And that's a compliment to him and his success and the way he represents himself and the way he prepares and who he is and how he talks. It's one of my main obligations and responsibilities to this university is to make sure Marcus wakes up every day knowing that he is supported and valued by Notre Dame. And I can say with 100% certainty he feels that way. And Notre Dame is totally aligned around the importance of college football for Notre Dame. We're totally aligned on how he is the perfect coach for Notre Dame. And he's, as I like to say, it's tough to say he's more than the Notre Dame football coach because being the Notre Dame football coach means so much. But he's more than the Notre Dame football coach. He's part of this university. He's part of the fabric of this university. So is Joanna. So are his kids. He's everywhere. He's at, as you've heard me say before, he's at soccer games, women's and men's basketball games, hockey games, talking to students. He's an amazing individual and an amazing leader, and we feel blessed that he's our coach. I make sure that he knows that he will be where he deserves to be, and that is at the top tier of college football coaches when it comes to compensation every year. I view his contract, although a multi-year contract, as a living, breathing document that we will revise every year as need be to make sure he's where he deserves to be. He knows he has that commitment from me and more importantly from the university.
And then back to the ACC a little, I wonder if you've ever picked up on any of that strain from the members. I think Dave Clawson said some things before he got out. In terms of your success in the portal, 3 straight years you could make the sense that you guys went in there and got your top portal addition from an ACC member, Hartman, Leonard, and Fields. Has there ever been any mention even from Jim Phillips about, hey, hands off, or how do you spin that into this year's portal? Do you ever provide a governor on yourselves in terms of how you shop against ACC schools?
Well, in terms of up until this moment, I think the relationship between Notre Dame and the ACC has been unbelievably healthy and mutually beneficial. That's, I think, one of the reasons why we were so kind of flabbergasted by this. We don't think about an ACC governor on what we might or might not do in the portal. We have our own governor. Whether you were talking to Marcus or Micah or Niel or any one of our coaches, Notre Dame, we have to be incredibly selective and incredibly precise and opportunistic when it comes to the transfer portal. Notre Dame's a high academic school, as everybody knows, and we have to be really selective. And we have a wonderful relationship with Mickey Kidder on our admissions department, and we go and we sit with Mickey and we say, okay, we're interested in this young man or this young woman, and this is the school they're at, and these are their grades and the courses they've taken, and yes, they're in-person classes and not online classes. Even conversations with transfers from other great academic schools. So we're not one of these schools that are going to go out there and overhaul a roster, particularly in football. That's not what Marcus wants to do. Yeah, he wants to get a Malachi Fields, a Will Pauling, a Riley Leonard. He wants to be really specific, really opportunistic, and get people in who can succeed on the football field, but can succeed here at Notre Dame and have a great Notre Dame experience. That's important for us. I know it's important for him.
That is all the time we have today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.